Torrey Smith and the Ravens, now 2-1 on the year. And as you mentioned, Justin Tucker, I mean, one of those things in the offseason that perhaps the NFL will issue, obviously, seemingly every year, there's 2 or 3 new rules that are attempted to be passed in the NFL. It was the overtime rules last year. And, of course, this rule could perhaps be a big one, as we could see something like baseball. Phil, we mentioned earlier before the game or before the broadcast that the NFL could issue some sort of a strike box kind of thing, a deal for the NFL, and that would have proved to end the controversy in this game. And to have more on this game between the Patriots and the Ravens, nice to see Cameron Sadeghi back for the second time tonight. We'll get a quick update on what Cameron thinks of this ball game that the Patriots, a nail-biting finish, they end up short 31-30. Cameron, what do you have on this matchup?
I have to say this first. Torrey Smith, even though I partially root, and I know it's terrible to say, even though I'm a host, I partially root for New England. I was rooting for Torrey Smith. I honestly was hoping that he would get a few touchdowns. He would make some big plays. But to be honest, though, I still, sitting here, as stubborn as it may sound, that kick did not go through. I mean, I know Mike Pereira, he used to be a former head of officials, and he was talking about the kick went through. But there's no way how, at that angle, there was no conclusive evidence. And I know you can't review kicks, and which really, really kind of annoys me. Because if you can't review kicks at the end of the game, and a playoff spot is on the line, and it comes down to a kick, and it's something like this, and we don't know if it's short or long, it's really going to be controversial. And I feel like the NFL's got to change that rule. I don't know how those referees, when it's so close initially, if I'm a ref, or without any bias, if I'm a ref and it's that close, I'm going to lean to the side of no good. I mean, how do you come up with that on the spot, on the fly, and automatically say it's good without really any conclusive evidence? I thought it was absolutely crazy on the part of the replacement officials. And you know what? Some people are saying Bill Belichick did a bad thing by going out there, holding on to the ref, but like I said on my Twitter account, if Bill Cowher does that same thing, does anybody talk about that? No. If John Harbaugh does that, does anybody talk about it? No. Same with Jim Harbaugh. Same with Dennis Green. I know I'm going all Dennis Green on everybody, but even Dennis Green would have done the same exact thing. So when you look at this, I honestly don't think, Belichick's going to get fined, but it shouldn't be a heavy fine. I would have done the same thing too. I may have tackled that ref probably, even though that's crazy for one win. But you got to review that play at the end of the game. New England really put up a complete game. Baltimore did as well. And sometimes the ball bounces one way or the other. I don't know. I seriously want a rematch in this in the playoffs to really see and find the true winner here. I still think New England's slightly better than Baltimore. That's just what I think conventionally, and I don't know if you guys believe the same thing, but they've got to review kicks at the end of games. I think you guys would probably agree with that.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that people have with what Belichick did isn't exactly that he did it. It's there's this kind of consumption around the league, and the league is ready to give out fines for things like this, that these big money, head coaches are kind of bullying these replacement refs, maybe trying to trick him into, I'm going to challenge this when, Bill Belichick, one of the smartest coaches in the league, like him or not, he knows what you can challenge and not challenge. So I think really the thing that people have the problem with, I'm not saying that I did it, because I agree with you. If that's my team and I'm losing that way, I'm tackling that ref right with you, Cameron. But when you look at it, they kind of look at it as he's trying to outsmart this ref, and I think that's the problem is, they're trying to help these guys because these poor refs are taking a beating every week. And I think the biggest thing is more or less trying to trick the ref, because you can't sit here and tell me Bill Belichick, didn't know that he couldn't challenge that call.
With you, and I also want to point with you guys. Is it just me, or during the whole course of the game, there were a ton of skirmishes, flags during those skirmishes? I'm not saying either Baltimore started the fight or New England. There were times where it was half and half mix, where New England would start a fight and they wouldn't get penalized. Baltimore would start a fight, they wouldn't get penalized. I thought it was a poorly officiated job, and I agree. I know the coaches are trying to bully these refs, but I think I'm just a little bit afraid that if we don't get these refs by week 8 or maybe even the playoffs, something really controversial is going to happen. I hope, when it's week 16 or week 17 that we don't have these replacement refs, because if we do and there's a pass interference down the field and a team, really needs this win and the pass interference is being called on them unfairly and the other team scores a touchdown and they don't make the playoffs just because of that one call, it will ruin jobs, ruin seasons, and if the NFL can't find a way to get this done, I think you'll have a lot of unhappy coaches and players all around the league. And I think it will be bad for the NFL fans. They feel like they'll get cheated and they'll feel like they didn't really get a true Super Bowl winner. So they have to either resolve this right before the playoffs or week 8 or even tomorrow or even after this Monday night game, some resolution. If I'm, Mike Carey and Ed Hockley with those guns in his biceps, I'm pointing at those refs disgusted. They've got to resolve this quickly, and thanks for letting me on.
Thanks, Cameron. Always, you're a pleasure to be on, and I want to be the other side of the token, if you may say, because these NFL officials, week 1, they were completely underprepared for this game. This is a speed game. Thanks, Cameron. I want to thank you again. I always appreciate your work. Thank you for another great insight on the NFL goal line. And I want to err on the other side of the token because these NFL referees are doing the best job they can, and it's not just me. It's a lot of guys that are certainly on the side of the referees and that they're doing the best they can, and it's certainly, I've seen the improvement from week 2 to 3 in that game against the Ravens and the Patriots. Nothing beside the final call was anything near controversial. On the game-winning drive with the Ravens, there was a pass interference call where McCourty it wasn't completely obvious, especially with how fast the play was going, but McCourty did hold on to Smith's jersey on that game-winning, you may say, Joe Flacco pass attempt that was called. The referees did a good job on that final drive and perhaps the entire game. So for the NFL referees, they're doing the best job they can. And from week to week, I see the progression. Now, it's not the same level that the normal officials are doing, but the referees are doing the best they can. And with the NFL putting these guys in the worst situation possible, just throwing these guys into NFL games, they're doing the best job they can. And now the NFL is clamping down, and there was finally some stability at the referee position. Not the kind of talent that you have with the starting officials, but they're doing a better job, Phil.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those situations where they definitely are getting better because, these are guys, they are referees at some level, so that, there's things that they are going to already know. And, week for week, as much as we harp on these guys, we definitely got to give them credit. I agree with you. They are definitely getting better in, what they have going for them. And you look at some of these guys, this is a huge drop-off. There's some of these referees that have only officiated lingerie football league. Like, I remember watching the Eagles game, and there's a few guys in there that they mentioned saying that that is the only place that they officiated professional, quote-unquote, football. So it's definitely one of those things you got to give them credit for trying. And, as Cameron was saying about the fights not being penalized, we touched on that last week. All they would get is offsetting penalties on both sides. But another thing, and this is kind of going off a little bit, but it's still kind of the same topic, there's been a lot of those incidences with Ravens games. And it seems that the Ravens are always ready to fight somebody. And, it happened with the Eagles, and I thought, okay, maybe it's, two physical teams, I get it. But how often do you know the Patriots to pick fights in games? I think this Ravens team is just a little bit chippier than normal, and normally that's a good thing. But in situations like this, it might come back to hurt them because they could get fines. If these refs come back, the normal referees, and they come back and they want to put the hammer down, I would not be surprised if it's the first guy suspended or ejected from a game this year as a Ravens player, because it's becoming a little bit more than a theme, an oncoming theme and a pattern that the Ravens are always in the middle of one of these skirmishes, if you want to call them that.
Baltimore certainly taking the mantra that the Steelers had the entire 21st century, you may say, of completely just roughing out the opposition. And it does seem, I agree with you, Phil, a week in and week out kind of basis where the Ravens just seem to be a little more physical than they should be. And so far, no one's on the Ravens side has been ejected, and I think the NFL needs to take a closer look at that. And you mentioned that the Eagles were one of those non-beneficiaries of Ravens' physicality, and we'll take it over to Philadelphia's side because right now for this Eagles squad, after 2 one-point wins, the physicality got the best of them in a Week 3 contest against the Cardinals. Certainly two different sides of the token after this contest. Michael Vick under 50% completions and obviously got spanked around the entire afternoon. Eagles score 6 points in a rout as the Cardinals at home put up 27 on the Eagles. And Phil, being a Philadelphia faithful, what do you have on this matchup that certainly Arizona looks a lot hotter than they were going into the season?
Yeah, you look at this game, and this is one of those games where nothing went right for the Eagles. Honestly, they were down 17-0, and everything looked like it was going according to plan. Vic was going to go right down the field and score right before the half to keep it just barely in check and get the momentum going in the second half. That's been the theme for the first 2 games. What happens? They're on the 3-yard line. Vic fumbles the ball after getting completely blindsided. How he didn't sense that pressure, I'll never know. And it's returned 91 yards to the house for the Cardinals on a touchdown. And that just deflates the entire team. I was at an Eagles bar, hundreds of people, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of people watching this game in this little bar that I hang out in. And it just, after that, you could say the balloon popped. There was just no energy in the place, and you can't imagine it being much different in that locker room. Being down 24-0 at the half, and then you look at the final score being 27-6. So the Cardinals held the 3 points in the second half. Obviously, they may have taken their foot off the gas a little bit, but I think if that 91-yard fumble recovery on the last play of the half does not occur, even if it's just a field goal, even more lucky if it's a touchdown, you might be looking at a different game. But you can't really, make excuses at that point. At least this week, the Cardinals are clearly the better team, and they're 3-0 for the first time since the 60s.
Well, we mentioned that the Ravens are regarded now as one of those tough teams in the NFL, and now we can look at the Eagles being one of those controversial teams. Andy Reid, ever since he's been under the helm, has gotten nonstop criticism, and none was more evident than when that Michael Vick fumble return for a touchdown certainly popped the balloon, as you mentioned, Phil, out of the Philadelphia locker room, and certainly after watching that play, the Eagles were done. I mean, the Arizona defense was just all over the field, and going to the other side, the contrast of that was people want to criticize that one play. Michael Vick held the ball too long. You could put it on him, but in an entire game, especially the first half, the NFL, the post-game stat was that Michael Vick was hit 13 times. You don't want your franchise quarterback on the ground 13 times. You say at the end of the first half, Michael Vick, his jersey's torn. There's grass all over his uniform. Michael Vick was pummeled that game. So the offensive line issues goes beyond the quarterback. Right now, LaShawn McCoy is not the same running back that we expected going into the year, and you can put the blame on him or on that offensive line as the right now this decimated offensive line. We mentioned that Kelsey, the center, Phil, you can go in on that. He's out for the year. So now this offensive line is consisting of backup players and certainly was completely undermatched in this game at home where the Cardinals took advantage of every opportunity, and Kevin Cobb certainly proved that this Eagles defense is not as good as we thought they were.
Well, if you look in the past couple of years, the Cardinals have tended to have the Eagles' number. I'm not sure if it's just the way they match up against this team, but in any event, that does seem to be the case. And you look at it, really the Eagles' offensive line woes started way back in the offseason when Pro Bowl left tackle Jason Peters tore his ACL, and it was out for the year. And they've been searching for it ever since. And then when Kelsey goes down, they bring in Dallas Reynolds, who is a good center, making his first career start. I thought he played, all right, given the circumstances. I think this offensive line will improve, but as of right now, it's kind of like a makeshift offensive line deal.